He Putin. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
We came, we saw, he died.
We both agree that Assad needs to go.
You know, fuck the EU.
Boa noite, pessoal. Tô num caos total e absoluto aqui para variar. Ok, iniciando transmissão pro Instagram, live para tudo quanto é lado. E hoje a gente vai falar rápido, uma coisa rápida aqui, para entender mais ou menos as perspectivas e os desdobramentos dessa tentativa de assassinato ao primeiro-ministro da Eslováquia, Robert Fico. Se escreve Fico, mas é Fico. E temos aqui hoje duas personalidades internacionais, o Nebojša Malić, que quem acompanha o canal já deve ter visto no programa do Interlatina Show, que é um repórter do RT News, e o Andrea Lucidi, que é repórter independente, colaborador com o canal de televisão italiano Italia Blue. Falei errado, provavelmente ele vai me corrigir assim que ele entrar na tela. Vamos lá, vamos bater um papo sobre isso aí. Lembrando que na descrição as formas de ajuda para o Rio Grande do Sul, ok, pessoal? Então, lembra de dar uma olhada nisso aí. Peço desculpas também porque a live foi improvisada de última hora, consegui chamar o pessoal e levantei aqui como deu. Então, se não tiver perfeito, vocês sabem como funciona aqui, né? Então vamos lá, vamos trazer os convidados, que obviamente eu esqueci de botar na tela. Não tem problema, a gente resolve isso agora. Hello, Nebojša. Hello, Andrea. How are you guys doing?
Hello. All fine, thanks.
Good evening. Good to be here.
Thank you guys for coming this last-minute call for trying to talk a little bit about this very serious developments in Slovakia. So I'll start with Nebojša. Nebojša, we were exchanging some tweets this afternoon about the situation, and one tweet called my attention very well, and it was basically saying that, you know, some people did something very stupid there. And as we were just talking before coming on air, I was this is very speculative at this moment. It's very hard to take a position on what's going on. So the idea was to see how this is developing in the areas. You are in Serbia. Andrea is in the Donbass, I believe. And to understand a little bit, probably a little bit later, we'll have Nina as well, and to understand how she's seeing things there. Perhaps Comandante Farinazzo, who is a Brazilian analyst, it's out of reach today, so he just answered me. So, Nebojša, how do you see these things developing in the perception of Serbia?
Well, I mean, Fico, when he returned to power, because this is his third term as prime minister, when he returned to power last October, he basically was very, very quick to reaffirm that Slovakia is not going to recognize the secession of Kosovo. It's been one of their consistent positions since 2008. And there were some rumors that the previous government might do it because they were totally in the pocket of NATO. And he's basically immediately set up a relationship with the government here and sort of set up this really interesting dynamic between Slovakia, Hungary, and Serbia as de facto regional neighbors. and countries that sort of shared a position towards the Ukraine conflict in that, it should stop, it should be negotiated, this has a potential of turning into a world war. And the Western response to this is completely irrational. And this whole thing of give Ukraine all the weapons it could possibly ever want and then some, but pretended we're not involved, it was sort of, incongruous and borderline schizophrenic. My words, not his. And so it's been 6 months, or more months. He's been in power for over half a year, and he's already attracted a lot of odium in Brussels. While Orban was the lone dissenting voice, they could marginalize him, but now there's 2 dissenting voices, and that's a threat to the bureaucracy there. And so they're trying to shut him up through various political pressure, and all of a sudden some, last I heard was a 70-year-old poet, liberal opposition activist who for no reason whatsoever suddenly one day decided to grab a gun and shoot him point blank. We don't know anything about his motives. We don't know any details about this. No doubt some people have already said, oh, they're just going to declare him crazy and, write it off as a mental health episode. But, it's given all the circumstances, it's really surprising that the first thought of just about everybody, including myself, was, okay, the empire's behind us. They failed to shut him up through other means. Now they've decided they need to physically eliminate him. And that's why I said, whoever did this just made a huge mistake, because once you open up the Pandora's box of political assassinations, it doesn't go back. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. You've just unleashed the gates of hell. And Europe has known some pretty gnarly political violence over the decades and has worked really, really hard to put a stop to it. And so the people who think they can, and maybe I was primed to think that way too, because just yesterday you had this Albright flunky who is now back at the State Department, of course, Jim O'Brien, going to Georgia, going, yeah, when we threaten to sanction you, this is not extortion because we say so. This is us being referees of the international order. And by the way, if you do anything to these peaceful protesters, you will be sanctioned. Which to me was, first of all, mafia language. Secondly, he's basically outlining to the peaceful protesters exactly what they need to do to stage a false flag to justify the sanctions. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is thuggish behavior. This person should be deported out of the country immediately. And it's like, yeah, we're spending millions on Georgian civil society. That's the problem, Jim. That's what this law is designed to stop.
Exactly.
This guy doesn't get it, or gets it and is just playing stupid. And so obviously if these people are so shameless, and if they're so out of touch that Blinken's going to, doing impromptu guitar gigs in Kiev, of course it would cross their mind to do something like this. Of course it would.
Just by chance, as you mentioned, there is this thing going on in Georgia. Not only him, but also, what's his name? Michael Rust or something like that.
Yeah, the German guy.
The German nauseating person. I don't even know how to define that man. The German guy that works for the government, and his profile on Twitter has the EU flag, the Ukraine flag, Israel flag, Georgia flag, wherever the new thing flag, colorful flags. I mean, where's Germany? At least worried to put Germany flag there. I mean, doing that.
Annalena Baerbock famously said, I don't care about what my German constituents think. I made promises to Ukraine. It's like these people don't really care for their own people. Mm-hmm. The worst problem is here that you've got all of these German parliamentarians and EU parliamentarians who realize that because of this whole political dynamic in the globalist empire, they can go to Eastern Europe or to these aspiring member countries and basically LARP as colonial gods to the natives and tell them what to do, because for the past 30 years there's been this whole practice of deputy assistant undersecretary going and telling these countries what to do. And Georgia is finally pushing back on some of that because they're fed up with being a puppet, and they see they have eyes and see what's happening to American puppets. But you have so many other countries and portions of countries and aspiring countries that don't think that way, that would much rather lick the American boot because they believe that will bring them some sort of benefit. Even today, after everything that happened.
Yeah.
And so, and these people get away with it. And you have, there's this, there's a group of people in Serbia, very, very marginal, but they're very loud, who would literally beg for like foreign bombing or foreign intervention against their own country so they could be in charge. And, when I was reading some tweets from Georgia, oh, please, West, help us. We are losing our country. Your parliament, elected parliament, your parliament, democratically elected parliament, just passed a law on limiting the influence of foreign agents, and you're inviting foreign intervention. I'm sorry, let me look up the dictionary definition of treason right there.
This is a very serious subject. I should not laugh, but I'm sorry. It is funny not to laugh, to cry. I would say like that. This is one thing that we say in Brazil. We laugh not to cry because it's amazingly, it's really amazing how to sit. And you see, you're talking about that. Tomorrow we're going to have a program with Nina Byzantina here in the channel with the Winter Latina show about the Georgian situation. And in Brazil, we are starting to scratch through a kind of FARA law. And I call it FARA law because I learned about FARA law much before learning that Russia has the same type of law, which is recent.
Yeah, the Russians copied it, and in fact, their version of FARA in 2012 started off much milder. They've been toughening it ever since. I mean, just this evening they enacted some amendments, basically saying that anybody who's on a foreign agents list, can't run for office. And I'm like, wait a second, they could before. like that to me, who's lived in America for 28 years, and I'm I've covered FARA and the FARA prosecutions under the Trump witch hunts. It's like the person who's forced to register under FARA is like severely curtailed in the sense of what they can do, and it's mostly these foreign lobbyists who take massive amounts of money from foreign governments to essentially rep their interests in Washington. But few years back when they were trying to, when the deep state was trying to coup Trump, they suddenly designated RT and all of the Chinese media. And so you have journalists here who are just doing their jobs, and all of a sudden they're like, oh no, you need to register as a foreign agent. Look, what is going on here? What part of Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press is unclear to you. But, it's a whole separate topic in terms of American laws and American human rights and so on. Yeah. But yeah, it's an American law. And the fact that all of these astroturfed opposition protests are calling it a Russian law should tell you that they're astroturfed and entirely artificial. And so again, with that background in mind, I wouldn't be the slightest bit surprised. I'm not saying they did it, but I wouldn't be the slightest bit surprised if
there was some hand there.
Yeah, I mean, why would a random Slovakian poet suddenly decide to do this? It makes no sense whatsoever. Let's wait for the official investigation and everything, but it's sus.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the idea behind this talk today was exactly to understand how this is being propagated and being understood by people on the ground in several other places of the planet. Because, I'm in Italy, I'm a Brazilian. When I look at that, I say, hey, that smells bad. That smells very, very, very bad. Just out of nowhere, prime minister of a country, a guy that's being hated by by his resistance of the system. Right, wrong, I don't know. I don't care about that, but he's being hated by that. And suddenly, well, yeah, as you say, just a 70-year-old poet decided that, well, yeah, life was too lame. Let's shoot some politicians out of the blue. That smells bad. And if I see that smelling bad, I'm sure you did, I'm sure Andrea did, I'm sure people that is following this on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, they are looking at that and say, yeah, let's wait for investigations, but
yeah, well, that's the point. Like, the situation is such that you're basically primed to jump to conclusions because you see the signs and the setup everywhere around you. Joseph Borrell says there are members of the European Council that consider Russia their best friend and not an existential threat like it should be, and that all of the rest of us do. And it's like, okay, on one hand, it could be his private opinion. On the other hand, he's the foreign policy chief of the entire bloc, and he's basically painted targets on people. Mm-hmm. People have been suspended off of social networks for targeted harassment or whatever, or inciting violence for saying far less. And we can't have this different rules for politicians. I mean, okay, they would like to have different rules, but the whole point of rules as such is they're equally applicable to everybody. So if a Twitter rando is going to get banned for making a harsh statement, but the head of foreign policy of the European Union can essentially say, would somebody rid me of this troublesome prime minister? We got a problem. And he was very careful not to name any names, obviously, but it was blatantly obvious what he meant. One of the Russian lawmakers commented today, I mean, obviously the Russians have understood this as an attack on them, because Fico has long tried to have better relationship with Russia. And they're like, okay, this was a shot at Slovakian-Russian relations. Now, here's the fun part. Fun for certain values of. In the West, for the longest time, it didn't matter and doesn't matter what is. Only the perception of people.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what really happened. It's what people perceive happened and act accordingly. Well, okay, now you have that situation. So the Russians now perceive this as being an attack on them. They're now perceiving this as an attack on dissidents within the EU. So by that token, it's incumbent on Brussels and Washington to demonstrate that it isn't. There's sort of a presumption of guilt here at this point, because this is how it works.
Yeah,
they've created the atmosphere, so now they have to disavow. I'm sorry, they wrote those rules. That wasn't me.
That was a extremely important point you just made, and this is something that we constantly talk here in the channel, which is the fact that reality doesn't matter. And they push this, woke agenda, whatever you call it. They just push reality doesn't matter. What matters is perception. What matters is what you feel you are. It's what matters. What matters is what you perceive the world as it is. And that's what they do with the media of mass destruction, which is the name of the channel. That's exactly what they do. They create perceptions. I clearly remember last year Blinken talking about the conflict in Ukraine, just like a storytelling in a speech.
Yeah,
you remember
for
that?
Kindergartners.
Yeah, for Kamala Janis, she talked to people like kindergartners. I clearly remember he on the podium in the microphone just, Russia already lost. Putin has lost his war of aggression. I could see him sitting on a small chair in a library, on a bookstore, reading a book with colorful, outsides. It was just stupid. And as you said, that's the point of this live stream, is to understand the perception outside. And from my imagination, and I know we are about on your time, I would just like to answer this. From my imagination, we see now that Orban just wrote that him and Vučić are about to go visit Fico on the hospital. This, to me, it symbolizes, well, we just had China visiting, Serbia and Hungary and making good deals and good business and pretty much telling the European Union, we are welcome here. And now we see this. So it does look to me, so you as living in Serbia, as a Bosnian living in Serbia, do you feel that this will bring even more together these three countries, especially with the Kosovo situation?
Yeah, I think so. Most definitely the assassination whether it was intended to eliminate Slovakian opposition or was just a random act of violence, which I, again, do not believe, will definitely, especially if Fico survives, but even if he succumbs to his injuries, God forbid, is definitely going to bring three countries closer together rather than split them apart, and is going to reaffirm the importance of independent policy, because if some powerful forces are willing to go so far to shut critics up, that means that, these critics are onto something. It's sort of intuitively obvious. I really hope he pulls through. I really hope that we clarify the motives and that everybody who is even mildly critical of the current policy of the West triples their security as an elementary precaution at this point. There's things happening. The Ukrainian foreign minister and Zelensky's wife were in Belgrade right after she left. And Putin is obviously going to China later this week. And so something is definitely going on that's portending developments for multipolarity, and we'll see what happens. I honestly don't have any insider information as to what might happen, but I'm just saying that people who assume that the West will forever remain dominant and be able to tell people what to do in perpetuity are in for a very, very rude awakening.
Yeah, exactly. Nebojša, I'll thank you very much. I'm trying to arrange with you someday that we do that prelude to World War I. And as the name of this video today, is it another damn stupid thing near the Balcãs, not in the Balcãs? Let's try to get this together someday. But thank you very much for coming up for your time. I know that you are very busy today. And now I'll go to Andrea. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Andrea, do you prefer that we go in Italian? Andiamo in Italiano?
It's the same for me. Like, do you prefer?
Okay, so perhaps let's continue in English. Otherwise, it will confuse CapCut to make subtitles. How are you doing, Andrea? Sorry to make you wait a little bit.
No problem. Also, this conversation was very interesting for me. Thank you also for your invitation here, like always. It's always a pleasure for me to be here with you and your guests.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So let's go now to the borders of Ukraine and now Russia, Donbass. I saw today as I was trickling through the Twitter to see what was going on, because the first tweet that I saw about it was Nebojša's, and I was like in shock, and I was like, did this really happen? And just at that time, I caught you on a live stream talking about this, and I found very interesting as well, as we were talking earlier with Nebojša, which is the fact that, well, yeah, the guy I just saw 5 minutes before we coming on air, the guy speaking his first words about, and he really seems someone not doing very well over here, like Joe Biden. And I would like to understand this perspective. I found very interesting the video, and I would like maybe to explain how do you perceive this, and how is people there in the Donbass seeing this situation?
So I would like to remember to the people that are looking us now what the public discussion in Europe told about Fico when Fico became Prime Minister of Slovakia. A lot of liberals in EU politics, a lot of EU politicians say that Fico was a member of this far-right area, like Orban, this area that is for sovereignty against the Ukraine, Eurosceptical political area. So a lot of such things. In Europe, it's very common when some politician or political leader came to the power and he is critical about EU, it's common that the heads of the European Union start to tell a lot of shit about him. No, like he is a fascist, he is a member of far-right movement, something like this, like for Orban. And today, the president of European Council, sorry, I want to be precise, I want to be sure, Jean-Michel. Jean-Michel is the president of European Council. He said it's possible to cooperate with far-right movement. And this is very funny for me, and I would like to explain why. He said in the European Parliament, the question is who can come here and can be ready for cooperate for support Ukraine, support our democracy, and make European Union stronger. So for Jean-Michel, support Ukraine is the first part of European priorities. And he added, if I look to the political parties that we call as far-right party, I see that in this movement there are some people with it's possible to cooperate. Why? Because they share our objectives and interest on these topics. So, where is all the fascist problem that was with Fico or Orban now?
Yeah, it really sounds to me like they are starting to die down the narrative. I don't remember when it was, a couple of days ago. I was talking about this situation with Xi Jinping coming to visit Macron and then going to Serbia and then to Hungary, and what clicked me at that moment was that it really seemed that Orban, Macron has this aspiration of being the petit roi, the new great leader of the entire Europe, new Napoleonic dreams. Yeah, exactly. And it just, that click was, Orban is taking the front role here, because the ones that support Macron or whatever oligarchs behind him, they are losing power. They're not strong anymore, and China is.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
So of course this is a crystal ball kind of thinking how it's going to be in the future. We don't know, but what my impression was that Xi Jinping was much more, and this is not an impression, this is clear, water clear, that Xi Jinping was much more willing to talk to Orban, for example, than to Macron. And he just went to Macron to say, I've been here, done that, and let's keep walking.
Yeah, but also if you remember, such criticism against EU leader are always against people that use some keywords like national interest, sovereignty, independence from any foreign influence or external influence in their nations. There are some common points. There are some common points in this, and about what's happened to Fico here in Donbass. There are not a lot of comments about it, but in Russia, yes, and from Russian leaders are coming some comments. For example, President Putin condemned this attempt of assassination of Fico, and also he wrote, I saw a news, he wrote a telegram to the office of Fico for share solidarity with him and with his family. I think this is a very good political etiquette, but also a very good message for the West, because I think Vladimir Putin wants to show that he is ready, it's always open to the West. And when such event happens, it's not important if happens to a leader of the NATO blocks or European Union blocks, etc., because we are talking about violence in politics, and this is always bad. This is a disaster when we talk about democracy. And if I can add some consideration as historian, I would like to say that what's happened today, remember me what's happened in Sarajevo in 1914, because in Europe now we are seeing such type of tensions like in Europe 100 years ago.
Yeah, that's exactly why I put the I've been talking to Nebojša. We were supposed to do this video a couple of weeks ago, but we ended up. By the way, Nina Byzantina is here. Andrea, Nina.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
Introduced. I'm trying to bring Nebojša to exactly talk. We had a show with Nina in the Winter Latina show, and it was very interesting how he pictured the pre-World War I ambiance, let's say, the environment here in Europe. And we have exactly very similar situation. We were talking about Xi Jinping going to France, and I heard that, well, I read somewhere that Macron tried to contact Scholz so they could, or the Chinese group tried to put Macron and Scholz together so they could have a conversation, and they didn't want to, because right now Macron and Scholz basically don't support each other. They simply hate each other. And well, perhaps this is gossip, perhaps this is news, but the truth is that we see a completely antagonizing movement between France and Germany. You know, France says something about Ukraine, and then Germany just says something else, and then France cannot hold his stance, so he has to be better than Germany, and then he changes his stance, and then Germany changes again. So it's a completely crazy. And you know, when these two guys don't get along, we know how things happen. And the title of the live stream was exactly as this quote that is attributed to Bismarck, although I'm not sure there is actually historical records that he actually said that is the World War I would start just because some damn stupid thing in the Balcãs. And then we see, you just made a parallel with Sarajevo in 1914 and the Franz Ferdinand assassination. And that was exactly the first thing that I came to mind, because we are seeing all these things developing in Kosovo and around Serbia. And I was like, oh, damn, just another stupid thing. We had a show with Nina called Just Another Stupid Thing in the Balkans, which was about mostly Serbia and the Kosovo situation. But now I see this attempt assassination and I say, damn, here we go again. And, you know, I'm in Europe. I move half a world to have a decent life, and then people decide to make things worse again. It's just stupid. But I think it's a perfect parallel, and that's what's scary, actually. So yeah, so in the Donbass itself, you don't see too much talking about this, or okay. So we have Putin that have made a speech about it, or a message for Fico, and a little comment about what's happened. Yeah, and. In the other hand, as an Italian, I'm sure you still at least somehow connected to the news in Italy. How do you see the Italy going along with this?
So the Italian media, if you saw my streaming some hours ago, maybe you remember that I was a little bit critics about Italian media because they reported this this event in a little bit late and no, at the first time without any comment from Ursula von der Leyen, Jean-Michel, all European leaders. And I saw in the Twitter page, for example, of Ursula von der Leyen that she wrote condemned about this event more than 1 year after the assassination attempt. So it's like if they want to think if it's good in this case, give solidarity to Fico. And of course, the Italian media, I think now in this moment, in this historical moment, the Italian media are one of the worst media in Europe because a lot of them are completely submissive to European politics. So if for you it's not good to speak about something, you can be sure 100% they don't want to speak about it. And of course, this news was reported, but for example, about this man that shoots the Slovakian Premier Minister, nobody wants to report it, that his political view was a liberal political view, pro-Ukraine political view, anti-Russian political view. Nobody wants to speak about it. Why in Italy? Why? We can understand very well. Because for Italian media, also for state Italian media and for private Italian media that are living with public contributions, it's fundamental not make crisis in the politics, especially regarding the military support to Ukraine.
Yeah, that's amazing that I see this here. It is amazing that I don't see people backlashing on this because it's public money. Italy, it's not going bad yet as an European country, I would say, of course. It's not doing very well. It's we can see it in the daily basis. Things getting worse, and when you see things getting worse, and then you see, are we gonna send just some $1 billion to whatever country that nobody knows even what it is? It's over there. People know it's over there. It's over there. It's in Europe. It's in Europe. And yeah, that's I try to follow the Italian media, but it's just Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V from US media, from CNN. The Brazilian media is not better. Okay, so I'm not criticizing out of the blank, but it's just not. I don't see anything good, well written. And I'm not a journalist. I told you this before. Everybody that watches the channel knows that I'm not a journalist, but I can write things better than those guys. I'm sorry, but I can. It's just the reality. And if I can do something that is not my work better than someone that's a professional on that, there's a problem.
I can give you an example. I live in Lugansk, no? And some weeks ago, I saw very important news in a newspaper La Stampa about Lugansk. So I saw this news, I read, and was written in Lugansk, the Russian occupant authorities confiscated newborns to the family that don't have Russian passport. I was shocked. I live here. This is completely fake. And when I continue to read this article, the journalist that wrote this article said these news are from the Ukrainian Ukrainian head of Lugansk region. But Lugansk region, it's not under control of Ukraine. So this person, it's controlling nothing, in fact, but he want to make disinformation about what's happening in Lugansk. But for she, as journalist, was enough that the so-called head of Ukrainian administration of Lugansk reporting this news for write an entire article about it without any other proof.
Yep. Just to make an example, quick one, because I don't want to stay here the whole night today. It was supposed to be a very quick live stream, and I don't want to hold Nina as well because she has more to do. And just to make this point, I put up this live stream with 3 people from 3 different parts of the planet, and there could be even more if people wanted to come. In 5 minutes. That was the time that, it took me an hour to make the thumbnail, upload to YouTube and all those things. But that was the time it took me. So I have 3 different perspectives from 3 different parts of the world. Well, I'm the 4th here. And in 1 hour. And this person, Control-C, Control-V from, if you have... what's it called? It's Command-C, Command-V if you have an Apple. This person doesn't have, you know how hard it was for me to get people like Larry Johnson, Nina, Nebojša, was basically going on Twitter and writing a message. Hey, dude, you want to come and meet me and talk on my YouTube channel? And people say yes. Some people say no, but it's not hard to get someone on the ground to talk at least a on-the-ground perception. Look, this is not what I see. And then you make your weight about it. Andrea.
You can imagine a lot of newspapers and TV channel in Italy. Thanks God, now I collaborate with a national TV channel in Italy, but state media, for example, don't want any relation with me, despite I'm on the field, because they say that you are
Russian propagandist.
You are on the Russian side, Russian, but they say it's more diplomacy, like you are on the Russian side, and what is coming from this side, it's not true.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Andrea, I think I said the name of the channel wrong on the beginning of the...
Bio Blue.
Bio Blue. I said Italia Blue. Thank you for... you want to make a last observation about something?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Andrea, thank you very much. Until the next time.
Bye.
Bye. Nina, how are you doing?
Well, hello. We're in a different context. I'm even wearing my telephone credit card salesman. By the way, I do not actually sell credit cards. It was just a little bit crazy outside, so I thought these would be a little bit better to block out the noise while I'm in the process of getting a better setup. So yes, I look a little bit ridiculous with my little fake...
We all do.
fake operator microphone, but I don't want to repeat myself because I missed Nebojša's the beginning of his commentary, and he's usually very, very well researched, even in a situation that is developing, so hopefully I'm not repeating myself too much, and of course it's possible that we might share certain perspectives. So obviously it's I know we're not talking about the actual specifics because literally every 5 minutes something pops up that contradicts the previous piece of information. So when I was logging into this one, I saw that you retweeted the news that that Fico was actually doing well, and then I saw 5 minutes later the debunking of that coming from the Foreign Ministry of Slovakia, saying that no, the surgery is still going on and that he is in critical condition and it's impossible to tell whether, you know, he'll survive. So all of this information is very contradictory at this time, and I, you know, haven't checked in the last 5 minutes. Who knows what the developments are like? So obviously, in this regard, you know, we don't want to focus on those particular details. We want to wait for the investigation. Now, of course, when we think of the investigation, we are probably going to take it with a grain of salt. So again, I saw the last part of what Nebojša was saying. It's very difficult to believe that some random retiree grandpa who is, you know, a poet decided that he's going to martyr himself by, you know, shooting this politician with very good security. I mean, obviously wasn't good enough, but in this day and age, usually politicians have pretty good security considering historic, you know, famous historic assassinations, attempts and, you know, successful assassinations in multiple countries. So that alone is very sketchy. But so I'm in North America, so I saw the news probably a little bit behind people who are in Europe and are in later time zones. And of course, you know, obviously the first thing you think of is it's shocking. And it's shocking because this is one of those dissidents that Nebojša talked about. And as far as dissidents go, there's only like, you can count them maybe on one hand or two hands, like a little child, right? As far as dissidents go. And when we say dissidents, we're not just talking about Ukraine. We're also talking about, you know, we're on YouTube, so let's be careful. A certain illness that was going around a few years ago and a certain sort of global scale policies that certain health organization was trying to implement and is still implementing. So some of these dissidents also oppose either those policies altogether or parts of those policies. So it's not just about Ukraine. I think it's kind of important to mention that. And so when I think of dissidents, they're also sort of a little bit different. So of course, you know, Orban in Hungary come to mind, but his level of dissidence to, you know, the official EU policy, I would say is a little bit more muted. And of course, even that is too much. So if you literally Google Hungary's position on the war in Ukraine, to any reasonable person who is not in politics, it seems very reasonable. He is calling for a ceasefire and peace talks for Ukraine. You know, again, any normal person who is not, you know, who's not running NATO perhaps would say, wow, this sounds quite reasonable. We already have a death toll of 500,000 people perhaps on, you know, just one side. Perhaps it's too much. This isn't going anywhere. This isn't going as planned. Let's try to resolve this. But this is too much for, you know, this is too much for the EU leadership, which is why we've seen all kinds of ways of undermining Hungary within the EU, which kind of blows your mind that this is supposed to be this, you know, super state in which everyone gets along. But obviously, the second that someone disagrees to a minuscule degree, this person is going to be shut down in various ways, whether financially, whether trying to pull funding from the country, or having hostile media,
shut down,
or possibly actually being shot. But I'm just saying, my example of Orban is that he's much more muted compared to Fico. Another person that comes to mind is I'm going to butcher his name, as the Croatian MP in the European Parliament, Mislav Kolakušić. I apologize to people who speak Croatian. And he's also been critical of similar issues, I would say to a greater extent. I think he's independent as far as I understand, so perhaps this is why has been able to be more critical as far as, again, the certain illness that's gone around a few years ago, and as far as, you know, military shipments to Ukraine and the war in general. And then, of course, we have Fico. He is an actual, you know, prime minister of a country. So he is in a very, very high position. And his level of dissidence has gone, in my opinion, much further than someone like Orban. So I was looking up some of his public statements, and of course he's also been critical of the World Health Organization and trying to implement things that would globally impact multiple countries. And perhaps critical of the pharmaceutical industry, right? So again, trying to be careful here, but you can look into what he actually said and how the media, who really doesn't like that type of statement, how that is being portrayed. Even criticism of Ukraine goes, the war in Ukraine goes. You know, he's obviously made statements similar to Orban, but he's gone farther, right? He talked about vetoing any future membership of Ukraine in NATO, right? So that's going a little bit farther. Beyond that, he's actually gone and talked about the war in Donbass as being the genesis of the current situation. So you don't actually see, or perhaps it's not being amplified in the media, other European dissident politicians or parliamentarians going that far, where he actually makes that kind of a statement. And by definition, when you go to 2014 and you talked about the slaughter of women and children on Donbass, and you just had your person on the ground in Lugansk who knows full well what's gone on there, that's automatically puts you into you're disseminating Russian propaganda camp, even though there are multiple reports coming from all kinds of, totally not Russian legitimate human rights organizations, from Amnesty to Human Rights Watch, et cetera, that were initially covering that conflict in a fairly decent way, right? Not perfectly, but definitely that type of coverage came from other places, not just Russia. But nonetheless, today this is considered Russian propaganda. I mean, you even have media reports from CNN covering it, right? From 2014, 2015. And so the fact that you have...
I always remember, there are several BBC documentaries on YouTube from original BBC YouTube page that you can see whatever.
Well, here comes. Well, this is the little girl. But I'm just gonna say that this is my other analyst. You guys probably can't. Well, yeah, she decided to pass out behind me for more moral support. But yeah, so if you kind of compare again, a handful, you literally can count them maybe like a child on one or two hands on your fingers. I would say Fico, as far as leader of a country, has gone farther in his public statements than other leaders who we would consider dissidents, and definitely the EU and our favorite gynecologist Ursula would consider a dissident. So in that sense, he already had a big fat target on his back. Now, when we say a target, we are obviously not thinking of an assassination attempt, right? We usually think about media smears, kind of like your previous analysts talked about, painting him as, oh, he is too far right, or he is this, or he is that, and using that kind of as a way to smear someone, as opposed to actually discussing their actual political position. And so, and now the big guy is trying to move my entire setup because he's big and heavy. There we go. I apologize. Yeah. So I jumped on Ursula's Twitter and, quote, "I strongly condemn the vile attack on Prime Minister Robert Fico. Acts of violence have no place in our blah, 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 beautiful democracy," right? And then you go, of course, European values, etc. I stand with his family. So very, very generic condolences. And then you go look at the comments, and she's just being slaughtered in the comments by people saying, look at Fico's position on the WHO's, at his position on ending the war in Ukraine. So all of the things that Ursula obviously is completely behind, and in fact is one of the driving forces in terms of promoting these issues, she's just being, again, random Twitter uses, a very quick look. People, I don't know who these people are, but they can kind of see through what she's saying, and they're trying to point out a very obvious contradiction in her statement versus the types of smears that a politician like Fico, has received because of his more, practical approach to the European security, I would say, overall European security structure that obviously needs to be changed from what it is today. And the other thing, I'm not sure if Nebojša mentioned this, that really fascinates me is that you have well, obviously you have Serbia, but Serbia has been kind of a historical ally of Russia, so that's a little bit different. But you have Hungary and you have Slovakia. Now, these are, Slovakia, former Czechoslovakia. These were the countries that were in the Soviet sphere of influence during the Cold War. And usually in today's day and age, when the Euro-Atlantic rule-based order tries to instigate anti-Russian sentiment, they say, oh, look at, the way they controlled you and you were treated during the Cold War, in an attempt to pull them, to basically rein them into back into Ursula's lap of of promoting the war in Ukraine, back to the garden. But these people are very practical. Orban is practical. Fico is very practical. They're not thinking about, yes, we may have had this very tense relationship in the 1960s, for instance. They're thinking about today, and they're thinking about what in their country today. And they're thinking about, obviously, the danger of having the war in Ukraine blowing up into a larger conflict. The damn foolish thing in the Balkans, like you're saying, or near the Balkans, right? So these people have not been swayed by using that type of propaganda, by using that type of sort of historic examples. They're prioritizing what matters to their people today. And obviously, I find that fascinating that you have a lot of pundits jumping on this issue and saying, have you forgotten the Cold War? And obviously that really hasn't worked. And so I think that's really fascinating, that change in, again, towards multipolarity, where there are cracks within the existing structures, where whether it's NATO or the European Union or the turn to the East, all of those things that are happening simultaneously, I think it's really fascinating. And the fact that you have these, a couple of these Central European states that did not have, a good relationship with the Soviet Union just a few decades ago, but now their perception is much more about pragmatism than any kind of historic grievances that may or may not be relevant here, is really, really fascinating to me. So what is your take on it?
Yeah, exactly. As you mentioned, Orban, for example, it's an extremely complicated.
I really hope
person
he increases his security. Honestly.
Oh yeah,
I think this is the first thought I think that a lot of people had. It's like, oh my gosh, I really hope this guy doubles or triples his security, his security, basically.
That was actually one of the things that Nebojša mentioned, that just these people should start thinking twice about their security. And I go even further. We can see this also in the Brazilian president. The Lula da Silva, Luiz Inácio, is on the Miravoretsky list.
Oh, Miratoret, yeah, the peacemaker.
Yeah, the
right.
Peacemaker list, yeah. And so Orban is really someone, I have some Hungarian friends. They are very, so as a Brazilian, the Hungarian people that I met was very peculiar people, very nice people, very, very Gentile and everything, but different from Brazilians, and we have to understand that the differences on culture and everything. But we were going around having a beer together, having nice chats and everything. And Hungarians, they are very proud of their country. They're very proud. They have a very good and not bad pride. They're proud of this. I had this friend. It was very interesting because he was born in a region that was actually Romania, and then I don't know how this was decided at some point in the 90s or something like that. That the region just changed back to Hungary because
look at that part of Ukraine, right? The Carpathian region, right? You kind of have those, basically. It's a complex history, and it might change yet again because, as you know, that part of Ukraine does have a prominent Hungarian minority, and God knows what'll happen, in the next decade.
It's important to mention here for the Brazilian people because Brazil it's pretty much that big blob for a long time, so people don't remember much. The only thing that we lost was Uruguay, who was they didn't even speak Portuguese by the time, so they just become what they wanted to become, and they became a nice buffer zone between Brazil and Argentina. And
Buffer zone, yeah.
That's what they are.
Right.
But this guy, this friend of mine, he was born in this Romania area, so he was born Romanian, and then at some point the area became Hungary, and he could get the Hungarian citizenship just by asking. And the first thing that he did was getting the Hungarian citizenship, and as he said, using his words, picking up his Romanian passports, throwing on the water, on the VUCI, the WC, and making it go away. So this is a very strong sentiment. I don't understand. I don't understand how strong this is actually. But it's a very strong sentiment. And Orban is some kind of. I'm starting to think that being against is his thing. Being controversial is
like
his
a
thing.
Contrarian, yeah.
Exactly. Because when he was under the Soviet state, under the Pact of Varsovia, he was an anti-Soviet, he was a dissident of the Soviet regime and all that.
Right. And then, but he was also very young, so I think that's not necessarily to me what's more surprising is some of these people who were young and they joined the Communist Party, they ended up, today they're the staunchest, anti-Russian politicians, which is kind of hilarious because especially in the Baltic, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is to benefit your country first and foremost over any kind of foreign issues of foreign relations. It's completely logical and pragmatic. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, I feel like from what I've seen, I mean, there are some things that Hungary does, let's say, in terms of its support for Israel that is a little bit surprising to me, or perhaps I don't understand it, but that's kind of a separate issue. In terms of the immediate European situation, they seem to be doing something that is consistently or seeking something that is consistently beneficial to them. And I would say Slovakia as well. Again, they're looking at things pragmatically. Or maybe not they, but specifically Fico, they're looking at an overall stable security structure for Europe after this conflict is over. And obviously, to attain the structure that is more manageable and more long-term, you have to have good relations with Russia because we're on the same continent. Like there's nothing that NATO can do about the. Yeah, exactly. You're on the same continent. We always talk about Europe being a peninsula of Eurasia. Never forget that. So in that sense, again, it's a pragmatic approach to eventually we're going to have to get along. And of course, this is why, when you logged into the media, this for me this morning, many of the headlines were immediately painting Fico as a Putin ally, which was completely irrelevant to the assassination attempt. I mean, had this been anyone else, someone mainstream, they would have run, think about the assassination of Japan's leader, which happened actually quite recently. I mean, I don't know why this just popped up in my head. You didn't really have him portrayed as an ally of this organization, or from what I remember, or an ally of that organization. It was just straight up reporting of the news because he was within the rules-based order. But the second that they are reporting on someone who is slightly outside of it, and of course here we have someone who can be considered a political dissident as far as the EU policies go, he is being portrayed as a Putin ally. And of course, what is, the first question is like, what is the purpose of inserting this little qualifier into the headline? headline. It's to make you dislike him. If you're sort of a general consumer of the news, again, you don't have much interest in the news. This is what you're going to see. You've already been primed to dislike Russia and Putin, and this is going to be your perception. Oh, well, they try to kill him, but he's a bad guy because he's a Putin ally. So it's actually, it's kind of undermining our beautiful democracy and our beautiful garden, but it's not as bad had it been someone else within the mainstream, right? So very, very obvious stuff. And of course, it's just kind of amazing that there are still a certain segment of the internet that is trying to paint this as a Putin false flag. Now, again, had this been a mainstream politician, I'm sure every single news media source would have reported this as, it has Russian fingers all over it, because this kind of situation just lends itself to that kind of reporting, that kind of propaganda. It would be a gift. But because this is someone who is a Putin ally, they have to kind of be a little bit smarter about it. So first, they're going to discredit him beyond any other previous discreditation that they've engaged in, and there's a track record of that. But also, you're going to have these people in certain parts of the internet who are going to really, again, put on their tinfoil hats. We disagree with those tinfoil hats. We like our tinfoil hats. And they're going to paint it as a false flag, right? Which, of course, they've done with every other thing. Everything is a Russian false flag, according to these people. So it's really kind of interesting how the sort of the mainstream reports these things and how they try to sell it to you in order to still maintain the dominant narrative and basically to reinforce it. So.
Yeah, exactly. I just saw today, it was retweeted by Olga Bazova, this news from Sky News, if I'm not mistaken, just, kind of dialing down the whole situation and almost smearing Fico by his position.
I wouldn't say almost. I would say that is definitely the point here, is that he's less of a victim than someone that was.
My impression was different. It was not simply that he's less than a victim. It was more like, he kind of asked for it. He was supposed to be waiting for it. So,
which is actually, in my opinion, that's even worse.
Exactly.
He's asking for it. If you deviate from the dominant narrative, you might get shot. I mean, that's even worse. The implication here. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Nina, this is supposed to be a very quick video today.
I know you've now done 75 minutes of it. So yeah, I think we can wrap it up if you're.
1 hour. That was about all right. And just remember, everybody that's watching today or will watch later, that tomorrow we have the Winter Latina show with Nina Byzantina.
Yes, we'll talk about some people call it the anti-Soros law in Georgia, but we can also talk about other foreign agent laws. And also,
wasn't it supposed to be a Russian law?
I know, right? Isn't it supposed to be the Russian law? Which is, we'll definitely debunk the Russian law theory. But it sounds like we also want to make some parallels to the situation in Brazil. And of course, we can go back in history a little bit and look at the original American Foreign Agent Registration Act, which kind of served as a model for a lot of these laws in different countries, but including the Russian law, but depending on where they are, in some places they're good, but in other places like Russia and Georgia, they're bad. So we'll definitely jump on that. But I think talking about it as an anti-Soros law, I think is kind of an interesting way that some people have been, describing it as. But yeah, that's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. So thank you very much, Nina. Thank you very much, everybody that came today, the guys that have already gone. Thank you very much who couldn't make today. Thank you for at least answering me, telling me, today's impossible. And we always understand this was last minute.
Sending good wishes to Fico, of course.
Exactly. Let's
in a more genuine way than Ursula. Than Ursula's well wishes on good wishes on Twitter.
Anything is more genuine than Ursula's way.
Very
of
true.
Sending. Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, let's hope for the best for Fico. And as Nina said just before, I had retweeted a tweet from the Aussie Cossack that was telling that it seems that
Well,
everything
it was coming from their media, which is where
Yeah.
some people got it from, but then the Ministry of Foreign Affairs debunked it, and I haven't looked at the most recent report, so we don't really know.
Yeah,
But yes,
so
definitely sending good wishes.
It's still a developing situation, and let's keep our eyes on that and wish for the best for Fico. Let's hope he gets out of it and brings Slovakia to which is a beautiful country. I've been there. It's an amazing cuisine, actually. And yeah, so let's see you guys tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching us, and see you soon. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye bye.